Okay, let's unpack this. We're doing a deep dive today into, well, a topic that touches everyone. Building wealth.
Right.
We've pulled together a stack of sources kind of centered around this really insightful newsletter excerpt.
Mm-hmm.
And it explores what wealth means, not just money, but also mindset, habits, strategies, even creativity.
That's right. And forget the dry textbook approach. Our mission here is to cut through the noise,
Yeah.
extract the most important, maybe surprising, and definitely actionable insights from all this material.
Okay.
We're trying to give you a clearer picture of different paths, different perspectives on building wealth, just straight from what the sources say.
Exactly. And the sources, they cover a fascinating spectrum. Starts with, the foundational power of gratitude,
Mm-hmm.
and this surprising idea about why some people always seem financially stable.
Even on modest incomes, yeah.
Then it explores specific modern avenues. You got crypto,
Mm-hmm.
the nitty-gritty of freelancing, common real estate misconceptions, and, timeless wisdom from investment legends.
And like you said, they throw in some curveballs too. There are these unconventional ideas and even a really personal story about building value through creativity, like from the ground up.
Right.
It's a real mix. The sources actually call it a wealth potpourri.
I like that. And what's interesting is how they seem to start with the fundamentals, almost the philosophical side, before getting tactical.
Yeah.
They kick off talking about gratitude. The newsletter specifically asks how gratitude creates wealth, suggesting it's, well, way more than just a nice feeling.
Well, the core insight presented is that gratitude isn't passive. It's framed as an active practice that, fundamentally shifts your perspective.
Active. Okay.
By focusing on what you have, not what you lack, the sources argue you become more attuned to opportunities and you build resilience against setbacks. It sort of reframes challenges and fosters this mindset geared towards seeing and maybe creating abundance.
So the insight isn't just be thankful. It's that the practice of gratitude can actually tangibly change how you see and interact with the world.
Exactly. Making you more likely to spot and capitalize on wealth building opportunities.
Precisely. It's positioned as cultivating a prosperous mindset that then influences tangible outcomes.
Interesting.
And that connects directly to the next foundational piece the sources explore, habits.
Mhm.
They ask why some people always have money.
Even on a modest salary. Right. This section, based on the source, seems to reveal that financial stability or wealth isn't purely about the income level.
No, not solely. It's about these consistent, ingrained behaviors. Yes. The key takeaway here is the power of consistent small actions. The sources suggest there are 11 key habits.
Okay.
And the insight is that these aren't necessarily huge financial moves, but repeatable patterns. Things like disciplined saving, tracking spending, maybe continuous learning, stuff that compounds over time to create financial security, even without a massive salary.
Okay, so build the right mindset with gratitude, layer on these disciplined habits.
Yeah.
Then the sources pivot to specific strategies.
They jump into the digital world first with crypto.
Right. They explore crypto staking and yield farming as potential sources of passive income.
Passive income, okay.
So the sources explain staking as locking up certain cryptocurrencies to support a network and earn rewards.
Kind of like interest.
Sort of similar to earning interest in traditional finance, yeah, but with different mechanics and, importantly, different risks.
Gotcha.
And yield farming is presented as a related strategy. It involves lending or providing liquidity in decentralized finance DeFi protocols for returns.
So the insight here from the sources is that these are seen as modern ways to make your digital assets work for you.
Pretty much. Generating revenue beyond just hoping the price goes up.
Right. Though they imply there are complexities and risks not fully detailed in the excerpt we saw.
Exactly. It's highlighted as a contemporary approach, definitely standing in contrast to more, let's say, traditional methods.
Speaking of which.
Which, speaking of, the sources then shift gears completely to active income with freelancing, like a boss.
Right. This section, as the sources describe it, focuses on leveraging your skills directly. The actionable insights seem practical. Tips like, actively seeking clients.
That's proactive, yeah.
And strategically pricing your services higher to reflect your value and expertise, not underselling yourself.
Makes sense. And then there's real estate. The sources tackle real estate myths that keep people broke.
Oh, that sounds juicy.
Yeah, the key insight seems to be that common assumptions often stop people from even getting started or succeeding in property investment.
Like what kind of myths?
Well, for instance, one myth they might debunk is the idea that you always need a massive 20% down payment,
Okay.
suggesting maybe there are alternative paths or financing options that the sources go into.
It's fascinating how the sources present these, wildly different paths. Passive digital stuff, active service income, tangible assets, all under one umbrella.
It really underscores that the path to wealth can be really diverse, can it?
It does.
And this raises an important point the sources seem to address implicitly. With all these options, how do you choose? How do you evaluate them?
Good question.
And that's maybe where the timeless wisdom comes in, highlighted in their Rich Reads section featuring the Warren Buffett way.
Ah, lessons from the Oracle himself. Okay, so the central insight drawn from this, according to the sources, is that sustainable wealth building through investing. Yeah. It isn't about timing the market.
Not at all. Or chasing hot trends.
Right.
It's about identifying great businesses, really understanding their intrinsic value.
Intrinsic value.
Buying them at a fair price and then holding them for the long term, sometimes, decades.
Decades. Wow.
The sources really emphasize ignoring the daily market noise, focus on the underlying business quality.
And why do the sources highlight this? What's the argument?
Well, they argue that understanding Buffett's principles gives you a framework, a way to make rational investment decisions.
Rational.
Which helps you avoid those costly mistakes driven by emotion or speculation.
Fear and greed.
Exactly. And build lasting wealth through compounding.
Compounding. The magic ingredient.
It really is. The sources even include a quote, or at least a sentiment, attributed to Buffett. Something like, if you think day trading is the path to riches, Buffett would likely just acquire your company while you're busy speculating.
Huh. That definitely drives the point home. Focus on long-term value.
Spot on. The actionable takeaway is clear. Focus on quality, exercise patience, and just let compounding do the heavy lifting for you.
Now, the sources also throw in some more unconventional bits like that. Did you know factoid about a man buying an entire town?
Yeah, for the price of a mansion.
They're wild.
It's included with a bit of humor in the sources. Maybe check the plumbing first. Hope it's not haunted by bad financial decisions.
Yep.
But the insight there, I think, within that wealth potpourri theme is that unusual assets and opportunities do exist beyond the mainstream.
Mm-hmm.
It just reminds us that wealth can show up in unexpected forms, even if that specific story is more illustrative than actionable for most of us.
True. And speaking of that potpourri mix, there's a wild card section called From Pixels to Potpourri, a creative wealth building journey.
Ah, yes. This is a really personal account shared in the newsletter itself.
Right.
And it illustrates how creativity, just creativity itself, can be part of building wealth. The author describes something really simple, like needing to resize pictures, asking an AI for help, discovering a tool like Photopea, and then this unexpected creative spark happens.
They talk about the feeling, don't they? That rush of discovery, getting engaged in the creative process.
Yeah.
The satisfaction of building something, even if it's small, like a little story snippet for the newsletter itself.
And crucially, the sources connect this creative process directly back to wealth.
How so?
The newsletter itself, which apparently was born from this kind of creative impulse, is described as one piece in their wealth-building arsenals.
Alongside the more traditional financial strategies. So the insight there isn't just about finding a cool tool, but recognizing that the act of creating value, sharing it, engaging in processes you actually enjoy, that can become a fundamental part of your personal wealth strategy, even if it doesn't immediately mean direct income.
Exactly. That seems to be the point. The sources emphasize that wealth building, in all its forms, it isn't instantaneous.
Right. Takes time.
It requires consistent effort over time. And that personal story highlights that finding enjoyment in the effort, in the creative process or the building process itself, makes that consistency sustainable, makes it less like a chore.
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense. So to quickly bring this deep dive toward a close, we've really explored how these sources paint a picture of wealth. Starting with those foundational mindset shifts, like gratitude and consistent habits.
The bedrock.
Then branching into diverse tactical paths, crypto, freelancing, real estate.
Right, the different avenues.
We saw the enduring wisdom of value investing, championed by Warren Buffett.
Timeless.
And even touched on the unexpected role of, unconventional ideas and that personal journey of creative building.
And as these sources really compellingly illustrate, building wealth is typically a long-term endeavor.
Definitely not overnight.
No. It demands consistent effort, discipline and habits, and, as that personal narrative reminds us, finding enjoyment in the process itself can be absolutely key to staying the course.
Yeah, it's not just about getting to some future destination, is it? It's about embracing the journey, day by day, habit by habit,
Creative step by creative step.
integrating different strategies along the way.
Which brings us to maybe a final provocative thought for you, the listener, to consider.
Okay.
Given this whole blend of traditional financial advice, modern digital strategies, and these, deeply personal, unconventional ideas presented in these sources,
Yeah.
what role do mindset and creativity truly play alongside disciplined action in defining what wealth means and how to achieve it in your own life?